You've got to let go and let it happen. Because if you don't, you're going to be all clutched up. You're going to be constantly trying to do what can happen healthily only if you don't try. But we have a strange anxiety in us that if we don't interfere, it won't happen. And that's the root of an enormous amount of trouble.
I love you, Rock.
Rock it.
Welcome back to the Universal Thought Podcast. I am your host, E. Smith.
B.I.G.D.R.E. Dr. Dre. In the building.
We have universal thoughts, concepts, philosophies, ideas, and all around good conversations, man. And today on the show, we have a very, very special guest, man. I actually ran into this brother at a homeless giveaway, right? And he was out there. He I guess when the vibe just kind of takes over, two people that supposed to be talking to each other just automatically start talking, right? I don't even know really how we got into the conversation, but we just got right into it, right? And I found out who it was, man. This is the Memphis Democratic chairman, right, of the Democratic Party of Memphis, man. And I had him on, man, so we can get into some good stuff, man, about the city of Memphis, some local politics. And really just kind of get an understanding on where we need to be as far as people, man. So I want to introduce Mr. Willie Simon.
That's it.
Willie Simon. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I appreciate you guys. I appreciate you coming, man. We really do. The Shelby County Democratic Party puts up with me to serve in a leadership capacity right now. So I'm here, man, to serve. And when I met Mr. Smith on the street, we were just actually out there having some chit chat about what was to come, because right after the election, of course, everybody's reeling. I mean, we were reeling a little bit, but here in Shelby County, we did our work. We had folks that were on our tickets. Most of our people went through, and they won their races. But on a nationwide level, we know there's some work to be done. And we still think it's work to be done here in the city as well, because over turnout over the last few elections, we're starting to see a decline of voter turnout. And so being in a predominantly Democratic county, in fact, the Shelby County Democratic Party is the largest Democratic party in the state. And so what we want to make sure is that our electorate is involved, and they're involved with their elected officials. And so what we're trying to do is get to the point to where we're doing that grassroots stuff by talking to the community and reintroducing ourselves to the community, not just through elections, but through community of work, community affairs, that kind of thing.
Good deal, man. So how did you actually get into politics? How long you been in politics?
Man, I think actually I got into politics just like, I guess, man, by necessity. I'll put it that way. When I was young, when I was in high school, everybody said I had a political bug about me. Even when I was the president of my senior class, and folks said I always talk like a grown politician when I was in school. But I really was. I was really the way I was because my grandmother always said, if you're going to live in America, you need to be a true citizen, and you need to understand why you live where you live, and you need to be able to affect where you live, and you have to be effective in what you do. And the only way you do that is understand the politics, understand the education, and then understand the communication of your neighborhood. And so how I got involved in actually now working with different groups, working with Memphis University, working with a couple folks that were involved with that program, working with different groups behind the scenes, Boys and Girls Club, probably all kinds of different organizations, just contributing a couple of advisory committees associated with health healthcare, TLC. I was on the council on aging. Just understanding how our aging. I think I was like 25 years old on the council, council working with people, and just trying to understand exactly how lives are affected by the things that happen from a political standpoint, from a government standpoint, from a financial standpoint. We try to blend those things together to make sure that we have a real experience here in Shelby County. Not just feel like we're dumped on, but actually people that understand the inner workings and how all that stuff. So I just use it as an education. So politics is education, and finance is education. Having conversations like this is just an education.
So was you like a political science major, or you just learned going by doing the process?
When I was in college, I was a political science major. So I went there, I went to school, and I actually went to HBCU, Oak Hill University in Huntsville, Alabama. When I went there, I was a political science minor, history major. And so I always had a love for history when I was in high school, to the point that my history teacher let me teach segments of class. He let me sit up there because I just loved every aspect. And so in that process, I understood how history affects our future. And so, they always have a saying, if you don't know your history, your destiny is repeat it. And so what I'm trying not to do is repeat the negative parts. There's some parts about history that we need to go back to. Greatness in this city, like Memphis. Every city I go to, I try to absorb the history. And I know how Memphis played a part in just the development of the Mid-South, and how the African American community was a big contributor to saving this city back during the Yellow Fever. So for me, learning those aspects about the city and really understanding all the historic features that came out of the city really helps me to really embrace what the city can be, and really want to give back to the youth or anybody that wants to hear about how, instead of talking about the contemporary things that are happening right now, things that we see in front of us right now, to go back to the history and say, well, you can be, and where we started from, because it wasn't us being deemed the most dangerous city in the United States right now. So I think we will, at one point, be the most aggressive city in the United States. Everybody wants to come here to progress. I think we can get back to that.
I'm happy you said that, because I was going to ask my question. As a politician, as a politician, yeah. How would you go about, what steps, what first founding steps would you go by to getting us back to not being the quote-unquote dangerous city that we are, but like, what would you do to get us back to that being a progressive city such as Atlanta and all that right there? What would be the steps you would go about doing that?
I'm glad. That's a great question. So one of the things that I think needs to happen is we need to institute cooperative politics, to where this is not just I get your vote. You go in assume a position, and then you forget that I voted on it. I think it has to be something where we're at a point to where there's a constant conversation, not just during the election cycle, but there's a constant conversation between the elected official and the elected. And so it's important that we have candid, real conversations, not about I think sometimes we get into this global perspective of what being a representative is. We have to have a custom conversation about what happens. If you represent my community, I don't need you to be talking about stuff that's happening in Midtown if I live in Boxtown. I need to talk about what's happening in Boxtown. So I think we have to start doing that, number one. Number two, I think we have to take a broader look at exactly how we move the needle. It's not just through politics. It's got to be through government. It's got to be through community activism. It's got to be through education. And so when we take all those approaches and look at them, and then we understand there's a fiscal responsibility we have to have in our community to make people even want to be a part of this whole process. Because at the end of the day, people care about how they eat, live, and how safe they are. So we need to be involved with letting people know how our agenda matches up to theirs. And that's making sure that people have access to solid health, making sure that people have access to affordable housing, making sure that people have access to be able to talk to law enforcement in their area without having our relationship just be from a punitive standpoint, where we're having common goals being met in the community with our law enforcement agencies so that we can work together in dealing with crime. But I think what happens now is it's a react response kind of thing. So we have to be proactive. And so that's what, as a person that's in the realm of politics, I think we have to start preaching those values and making sure that people understand that this does not have to be we show up when it's time to get elected, or we show up before that, and then you know what you're actually going to do to meet the needs.
That's kind of like the electors and the people. What's one way for the people that did vote elector in? What is one way or something that official can do as opposed to the people sitting on the outside saying, well, I don't see anything they say they're going to do? What is something you can do where the people actually see what you're doing, making a change?
Well, I think really holding people accountable. One thing that happens during every election, you have a person that shows up and the person says, I'm going to do this for the community, right? And they tell you, hey, politician A says we got holes in the potholes in the streets, and we got, we have poor housing in the area. What, as a part of the electorate, the group that voted for this person, you should go in and make sure that those things are being met. Don't wait till it's time for the elections. You let them know as soon as they take office, we're going to hold you accountable for the things that you said that you're going to do. And I think you have to almost push an interaction by making sure that you write to your particular elected official, making sure that you show up at those scheduled town hall meetings, and not just one or two people that just want to talk. You gather the people in that whole community and say, hey, listen, we have to show up in numbers in order for us to be heard. And I heard somebody say, a wise man said a long time, the squeaky wheel gets oiled. And so you have to learn how to be a squeaky wheel. And I think that's what happens in a lot of communities where you start seeing people move forward. You have to make sure you can be that squeaky wheel, and then be fair to that person that's an elected official. And you know that this is something that he can't personally do something about. Just give him the resources so he can go and fight for you by going to the right government entity or the right the other elected officials saying, hey, these are what my constituents are saying. I need you to address this issue. And so it takes that progressive thoughts and those progressive actions in order to move us into where we have an active communication.
Let me ask you real quick. With the Tyrese Nichols situation. Now, going back to what you said about having a relationship with the police officers in our neighborhoods and stuff like that. That was the first time I actually seen something like that happen in Memphis. You saw it on TV, you see it on the news, you see it on social media, but I've never actually seen it up close person. Right. So how can we assure, like, how effective is that with trying to make things right between us and the police officers, and what's actually being done to make sure that doesn't happen again?
So that's sort of like that's a loaded question, because there are different aspects to that. You have the aspect of a police officer that, because the majority of the police officers are not represented by those 6 individuals that's involved in this situation. Right. So what we have to always look at is what took those. Where did it go wrong with those 6 individuals? Or were there 1 or 2 that spawned that situation to go awry, number one. Number two is, once that happens, instead of broad blanking the whole police force with that, that black eye that they have because of that situation, go in, and I think the community should have demanded that, hey, we need to have a real conversation on policing in our neighborhood. I think we have to have a real conversation about how we address how officers are recruited. Because now that we look at the situation, they actually went back and talked about how these guys were recruited to that task force. And then, just to be honest with you, we have to also look at if we have people that would like to make a dent in the crime situation in the city. Let's get some level-headed people that's from those neighborhoods and say, hey, I want to make sure I make a difference, and I don't mind being a part of 12, like people call it. Because we made police officers a bad name in our community when it doesn't have to be that. Now, on the flip side of that, the police have to come out and say, hey, listen, in order for us to really understand why we have this bad interaction in African is because we don't have an open line of communication. And it shouldn't be when you have a sentinel event like that. It shouldn't be when now we have national coverage on the news to say, hey, now we need to have this conversation. I think we have to all be responsible in pointing out these things. Whenever we see police inappropriate behaviors by police officers. I mean, I grew up in a neighborhood that we knew who they were. You were somebody that kind of pushed the line a little bit, you knew who they were. But nobody ever said anything because of fear of repercussion. So there has to be some kind of way of getting that out there without the fear of repercussion. And the other part to that is, if you can't influence it on your side as a citizen, your elected official should be the next person that you point to and say, hey, listen, this is what we're seeing. We need you to be our voice to have that conversation with them, whether it's your city councilman or your county commissioner, and say, hey, this is what we need to do. And I think that act of communication between the two will spawn a different outcome when it comes to us relating to community. Now, the Tyre Nichols situation, of course, escalated to something that it shouldn't have been. And I will say, and even Benjamin Crump said right away that what took place in Memphis was our police chief decided right away that those guys went wrong, and she fired them immediately. Now, what we saw in Minnesota, it took a while for they admitted to somebody doing wrong. They actually put those guys on the payroll and just set them at a desk for a little while. So I think we did a great job here. Our police leadership did a great job here, making a statement saying, hey, that won't be tolerated. So those individuals will release what won't do. Now, again, we still have to go back and recollect how they were trained, understand what was in their mindset when they did what they did. But as you know, neither one of us can take responsibility for anybody in this room doing something off the wall. We can't govern what somebody else can do. Even though we're all in this place right here, we can't say that somebody's going to lose their mind and go do something that ain't all of us do. So we have to be careful that we don't do that. So I just think we have an opportunity. I look at it as an opportunity to heal the city, making sure we have those conversations and not have this punitive relationship to say, okay, we're going to shoot and, they're going to get paid, but we still got the same culture. Right. That's how I'm feeling.
I totally agree with that. My question is kind of long, but we'll figure it out. I first and foremost know that the chief here in the city of Memphis came from Atlanta, right?
Yes.
Okay. I also know some of a little history about the situation that brought her here. And I know some about some stuff happening in Atlanta and somewhere else. You know, there's one or two black guys from the history. Right. And I know, I don't know how the process is of bringing, you know, another person or even her. I know it's a city council, you know, and all that. So I guess my question would be, I have a nephew. He is a deputy county police officer out in sheriff. And he's going to leave now because he has reasons. Like I've talked to him, he's like it's so politics. As his words are, when he loves doing the job. He loves his job. He's a true police, as I say. But he says sometimes they're handcuffed because of the politics behind stuff that goes on down there in the precinct and all that stuff. So he's not happy here, and he's actually going for lax. And I said, you're that unhappy? You only do the stuff that goes on behind the scenes. It makes it hard to really do your job because, you know, I understand that. So I guess my question would be, if we as citizens know that, you know, and I'm not saying that she's not doing a great job, I think she's doing the best job she can do. But if we also know that there's been black eyes on her past and we bring her here to a place that's basically is really getting hysterical, how do we as citizens, first and foremost, make a better choice, I guess? That's what you said.
So, I mean, because as we talk about that situation in Atlanta, I used to. Did you happen to visit Atlanta during the time some of this stuff was going on? So I used to frequent Atlanta a lot. I used to go there. I went to Oakwood University, which was in Huntsville, Alabama, and Atlanta was skipping a house. And so during the free years of the beginning of all of that,
let's get into it.
I thought you were talking
about recently.
No.
About the 90s.
No, so I'm gonna go back.
My close.
Yeah, so when he brought that up, you know, that was Atlanta that you see today was not the Atlanta you see now. And so there were some things when Maynard Jackson was the mayor. There were some things that were happening in Atlanta that made Atlanta powder keg, you know, for different situations. I mean, I'm sure you watched BMF.
Yeah.
And you see what happened in Osage. If you watch that show, you kind of get a bird's eye view of what happened. You had guys from New York coming down there making that corridor part of their new target area. And then you had people from the South. So you got I-95 North, I-95 South merging right in the middle of this big city. And there were so many different things happening at that particular time to where police had to take a different approach to what was going on there. It was like to best describe it, there was no real they had a time dealing with the crime because it wasn't local. You had both. You have parties that weren't local to Atlanta bringing the issues to Atlanta. And so when you watch BMF and see how it played out, you had people from Detroit, you had people from Miami, you had people from New York. And so now you're trying to deal with a situation that you understand your local crime, but you don't understand these criminals coming from different spots to your spot. And I think they took an aggressive approach to dealing with that. Now, what happens when you take an aggressive approach is that sometimes individuals that are part of that aggressive approach might take lead. And if you have that kind of situation that happens, I think if you train them correctly, you do everything you're supposed to do administratively to put those people where you need to put them, then whatever happens after that, that's an individual kind of thing that could affect the whole view of something. Yeah. I'm going to give you a prime example. And this is not to shift gears from the police, but I'm going to give you a prime example. Gangs in Chicago, the way when I was growing up, the gangs were there to protect the So, and even when you talk about the Black Panther Party or any of those groups, they came together to protect in a way that was kind of unorthodox to what we were seeing from the police, because they could do stuff that the police couldn't do because they had relationships with the community. And then all of a sudden, you saw that group infiltrated by whatever reason, whether it be those guys wanting to get into the drug game or whatever, and then it tainted what those guys were doing. And so you see a guy that may be like a Larry Hoover or Judge Ford, and those guys look at the situation and say, wait a minute, this thing is going off the hinges. Now, what I thought I was putting together, or Huey knew what I thought I was putting together, we got some rogue groups within our organization that are actually doing something different. And it takes things and really distorts the view of what you really started out doing. And I think the same thing can happen in any establishment, any established kind of thing, that you can have some rogue groups that decide to say, hey, we're going to push this a little further. And that, because it feels more effective to me. And I don't think you can go after. I think oftentimes we'll say, well, the leader, whoever put that together, whoever put the group, they're responsible for that. Well, to an extent, they are. But if you get somebody that's under that group that says, hey, I'm going to, push this a little further, then, I mean, I think it's nearsighted just to only blame leadership. You got to look at the individuals that's executing it. And so I would say, I think I'm a person like this. I do research on people, not just based off of based off the negative things that I see. I try to go back and look at why that happened and look at the whole picture, and then find out, was that person really linked to that, or is because we blanket put that person in that situation just happen to be the leader when it happened. So I mean, because we see that a lot of times when you're in politics or you're a leader in a big organization like that, that's going to be attached to you, no matter whether you pull the trigger or not. It's going to be attached to you. And I think as we look at that, I think people need to take a better look to make sure on the range is that really just her doing, or was it something that occurred down the line that really got tainted, and then it became something different?
But when and I agree with you on what you said, but when you see it, I guess how you looking at it, if it's a one-time occurrence at one specific place, I can see it that way. But when there is a consistent pattern, different places that you've been to, and you're seeing this pattern, I mean, you can say that. I mean, and I understand one individual can tear everything up, but consistency of saying that one individual did this here, and she was the leader there. Then she gets to another place, and the same sort of thing happens. One individual right there, and she's a leader. That kind of puts that even though, like I said, even with a quarterback with a football team, when you're doing good, you're gonna get all the praise. When you're doing bad, you're gonna get all the blame.
Absolutely.
So to me, that all falls. That's how that works. So my thing is, consistency shows a pattern to me.
Yeah, I think there's a lot that needs to be done, and even around that whole situation, I think there's a lot that needs to be done. And really having a conversation with person herself. I think that's a perfect opportunity for that conversation to really come up, because that gives her an opportunity to really answer those questions. And for me, being a person, full disclosure, I've actually had conversations with her. And from my conversations with her, I think she's a fair-minded individual that's strategic thinking. But, with every strategy, there's a counter strategy that comes with this stuff.
Yeah.
And so, as you strategically thinking through things, there are things that come and throw a cog in the wheel while you're trying to move things in the right direction. I mean, we're going to see not just see that with what's happening, what happened with that particular situation, but as we try to clean up the city and get the city to a certain like there's going to be some mistakes that happen because you have these gray areas. I mean, prime example, we're dealing with a situation right now where we have people being released from prison that committed, I'm talking about violent crimes with no bail, because one particular person is deciding that, hey, I don't like the bail system, so I'm just going to let people on the street. And we know that based on the type of crime that they committed, that probably shouldn't happen. And so it doesn't, I mean, it puts a black eye on a lot of people when it comes to that, because now you can say the DA had something to do with it. Now you can say that police had something to do with it. But really, it's a judge that they pointed to that's actually making these decisions. And it has become his battle cry because he doesn't like the current bail system. And so, whether right or wrong, whether people agree with him or not, I think it puts a gray area around what really is going on. And I mean, as a citizen, our basic thought process is you shot somebody and we know you went over and shot two people. You shouldn't be out of jail on your own regardless.
That's what I was about to ask you. That's what you talking about when you start.
Yeah.
It's just when you don't, for the person that committed that you don't understand a lot of legal and things of that nature. But if you understood the type of bond and releasing them on then it's cool. But and same, it's also you don't want a violent person on the street.
Exactly.
And so, but you just don't understand why they out. But then again, if you give them $100,000 bond, then they still make that. What's the difference?
And that's the thing we have to talk about, because again, our laws kind of dictate what we do. And we have to make sure that the people that we put in place to pass these laws think about what you just thought about. An average citizen shouldn't have to think through that. We should know that if somebody's a violent criminal and they are linked with some violent crime and it's heinous and it's crazy, they shouldn't be on the streets to do that again. And whatever your bond is should reflect the crime that you committed. I think it's crazy for somebody to be on a parking ticket and got a bond that's ridiculous when they can't even pay a parking ticket. Now they got to stay in jail for as long as it's parking ticket bond because they don't have the money to deal with it. Or somebody that's on a drug possession charge that they put a crazy bond on this person and they can't afford to pay it and they got to sit in prison for that. And then we let somebody who we know admittedly shots it. And then we say, okay, it's fine. We'll release you on your, and the fact that you get released on your own with home cognizance, it means that, you're not being supervised or anything. You just out.
It's crazy. And I understand the law is not perfect. Nothing's perfect.
No, it's not perfect.
So, yeah. So, I mean, it not being perfect, I think there should be consistent conversations, daily on the changes on things that we see that's happening more so now, because the more advanced and the more we go into just every day, things change. You know what I'm saying? And I think it's consistent. And I'm not just saying with Democrats. I think with Democrats, Republicans, I think with everybody
across the board.
Yes.
See, the one thing we've gotten to in this country is we play the blame game. I mean, and when we play the blame game, we all look stupid, because at the end of the day, we all pay taxes. We all want the same things, and we all want. I mean, we may have a different philosophy on how to get there. Well, we want the same thing.
Yes.
But instead of us saying, hey, let's work these margins to make sure we got been moving in the right direction, we sit there and point the finger and say, oh, that's happening because of this person.
Yeah.
That's happening. And we point to specific people. We don't even point to the policies that's around that. We don't point to the fact that, we have to start talking about our judicial system and how some of the laws need to be changed. We don't point to the fact that we We have a whole bureaucracy that has dictated, how somebody who is a model citizen that's an immigrant that's trying to get here in this country, how it takes them 20 years to even become a citizen. We don't talk about that kind of stuff. What we do is we take a powder keg moment and then we make it the whole thing. And so, and that's where we have to be careful about. We've become a society that's based around reality TV rather than being based around reality. Right. Because what we want to do is we want to say, hey, this is the thing. This is the biggest issue. And then you go and talk to 10 people on the street. They don't even know what issue you're talking about.
Yeah.
And that brings me, like, when you said that, they always say, man, people are most likely to get elected because of the uninformed opposed to the informed. So I actually agree with not having too much government to, dictate everything, and so people actually having some type of accountability in the things that go on. So I think we should know, like, law when it comes to police, or law when it comes to schools, or just law period. Right. So that when something does, happen and we have to elect somebody, we'll know what we're looking for, we'll know what questions to ask, and we'll just know how to, be a part of the conversation. Right. We don't know what to ask.
And see, one of the things that Maynard Jackson did some years ago, and this was a great conversation I actually had with the chief. And we had a good conversation about this when she was there, because I wanted to know about Maynard Jackson and how he was in Atlanta. And she brought up the fact that, I read this book. And the book said that Maynard basically went to all African Americans, all the African American citizens, and said, I need you guys to put down 5 local policies and 5 national policies that are important to you. And whenever you ask a question to that elected official that you're trying to put in office, ask them those 5 questions. And if they don't answer those 5 questions, until you get the person that can answer those 5 questions the way you want them to answer, that's the person you vote for that can answer those 5 questions. And I think we don't go to our elected officials with an agenda. Right. We let them, now if they take their agenda, they push it on you. So I think you need to have an agenda that makes them tailor their agenda to the masses in their community. And so you don't let somebody come in here and say, potholes the issue when your issue is really litter and crime. Right. You can't do that. You can't let somebody come and tell you what your issue is, because you live it and sleep it and eat it every day. Yeah. And so when you start talking about from an educational standpoint, I don't think it's right for somebody to come here from a state level and then tell you on the local level what's wrong with your school system if they haven't come and done the work and talked to the actual teachers, the students, the staff that actually doing the work. Because you can assume, and in my real life, I do assessments of different things specifically. So I go to places and I talk about how places are run and try to basic signals the system used in manufacturing, but basically it's for processing, continuous process of strategy that you use, and it's a methodology that you use. And one of the first things you do in it is you assess where you are in the community. If I come to your business and I say, hey, I want to see how your business runs, the first thing I do is I get the person that actually does the work to tell me how it runs. Then I go ask the leader, the person who owns the business, how it runs. And more times than none, I doubt that person that says how it runs on the lower level knows more than that person on the upper level. And so I'll build my model based off the person that's actually doing the work. not based off this person's vision, because that person's vision is not actually how the work is done. Now, my job is to match the vision to the actual work is done. So you have to go and do that in every aspect. You go and find out from people the voice of the, we call that the voice of the customer. You find out the voice of the customer. And the genius behind everything that we do every day, it's not script. Because a lot of things that we have in our head is what we do. Now, what happens in most things, we have a guideline with a rule, but really how it gets done effectively is in our head, and we don't never document that. And so what we need to start doing as a community, if we want to be more effective as a community, more effective collectively document and then hold a metric, attach that metric to it, and say, hey, in order for me to vote for you next time, I need to see a 30% decrease in this, or 10% decrease, whatever reason, I need to see a 10% decrease in this, or I need to see at least 5 town hall meetings in my area to discuss it. And when we start doing it that way, we have an engaged election. We have an engaged election official. And so now you have an opportunity to talk back and forth. And so I'm going to give what you want. Because now you have a real conversation. Now, if you wait till 4 years while they're doing a campaign, and they already did 4 years or whatever, however many years in between the next election, and you don't say anything until right before the election, I can tell you anything. And especially if you're not measuring me based on that, I can tell you anything. We'll go with that. Or on the flip side to that, if I'm an elected official, it's not fair to have to represent you without you telling me look at your issue. Because now I'm because you voted for me and I did this, and you still, and now you come back and say, well, I ain't really want to do it. Well, I don't want this. That's what I've been doing all along. So now tell me what you really want. And so I think we have to have that kind of active engagement. It can't be some kind of, I show up. I mean, imagine trying to have a relationship with a female. The only time you talk to to engage with them. You have to have that interaction every day, because one thing leads to another in order for you to even get to have the relationship with those people. So we have to look at every interaction where we're engaging in that effect. How much of a percentage is of us saying what we want, going down to town hall meetings, collecting versus actually fund somebody's campaign? Which part is the most effective part? The most effective part is both parts. So your money, you put your money where your mouth is. That's what I've always been told. And I've always been told that you put a situation like this. Here's how it's important. Being heard. We had 600,000 registered in this last election. And our actual turnout is around, I don't want to quote it, I say it's less than 30%. 35%. In a lot of precincts, I was getting calls and the numbers blurred right now. I'm realistic with that. But just say if you only have 40%, that means 60% of those people either didn't vote or they voted another way because your message didn't get out to them. That message didn't get out. And I venture to say it's the fact that they didn't vote. Because a lot of people don't even know it's an election if you don't go and tell them. Some people think the event is actually right. They think I registered it, and if you talk to a lot of people, they'll say, I registered, I did my job. But no, go vote. And that's, you got to go and execute that's what you did.
That's great.
It's like you saying I went and got my marriage license, but we didn't.
Yeah, but you couldn't. Yeah.
We got our name on the paper, but we didn't go and have the ceremony. I mean, those are things that we have to start really working on. And I think the education, that's where the education piece comes in, to where you say, okay, now that you said that you want to be part of this wonderful thing that we had, that our folks fought for, that people lost their lives over, we want to be part of this. And how do I actually engage in this in the right way? And engaging in the right way means that you execute. And the way you get people to execute is that you have to have a game plan for them to execute on. And so if I confuse you, sometimes confusion keeps people from even making the action. So it's our job on the other side of that to be clear about what we want. So that makes you make an easy choice. Oh, I know where they're going because here's what they presented to me. And I'm talking to this person not just every 2 to 3 years. I'm talking to this person every other month. And I know where they're going. And I see the direction they're going into. And even if we're not getting there as fast as I thought, I see the fact that they're trying to get to that point. And I'm willing to watch this thing out. So I think that's what we concentrate on. Just making sure that the engagement is there, not just showing up to the game and not playing. You gotta go.
It sounds like what me and John doing in Green Bay. It's like every other day.
Exactly. Make amends in the city, you want to make sure that, hey, that disengaged electorate, I need to reach out to them, because if I run again, I don't know if I'll be able to win with that little small amount of votes. I got to go out here and engage. And so that's an effort to make sure that, hey, I'm not a mayor for the few people that voted for me. I need to be the mayor for the entire city. And so that's why you will see active engagement from a particular mayor or whoever's in office. You have to engage those people, and I think he's doing a good job at having conversations with the neighborhoods. But the other part to that is working with a party like us. And since we're the biggest party in Shelby County, the biggest in Lewis, working with us to help get people to those points, so that now you're not just talking to the group that's your fan club. You're talking to everybody. Because it's easy to talk to fans, but when you're talking to people that really, didn't see you either way or didn't, you got to pull that other 60% of people in to come and have conversations with you, so that they can see exactly what you're doing and see if you can marry your vision to what they really want.
Did you Brandon Johnson, Chicago?
Yes.
You heard about him?
I have. In fact, I was just looking at a thing on him. Was it this morning? Yeah, about 5:30 this morning. I was looking at something about him and some of the stuff, because he's a progressive-minded young man. And some of his campaigning was he knew the South Side knew him, but he went to the North Side campaign because he said, "I know I got this group because they know me. Now I got to introduce myself to a group of people that aren't so familiar with who I am." And so he made a progressive effort to go do that. And so that helped him when it was time. So he got a chance to introduce his platform to others that may not have,
So just to give a little context, Brandon Johnson, from what I read, Brandon Johnson actually, he promised that he would lower property taxes prior to the project. That was his campaign, lower property taxes. As soon as he got in office, he raised property taxes like 3 $300 million, something,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
He paid $80,000 for the renovation of his wife's house, right? And everybody voted against it, so it was 50-0. So he wasn't able to raise taxes because everybody voted against it.
Right.
Do you see? First of all, have we ever regretted having somebody in office here in Memphis that said one thing and did polar opposites?
Man, that's another loaded question. So I'm going to say it like this. One of the things that happens, imagine yourself being in a position where you know you're on the outside, running out of office, and you don't have all the details. You have details that you know about what's publicly reported. And you get there and you say, here's my platform. I'm going to be able to do this, thus, and so. Then you go into that office and open up the skeleton. And the skeleton shows you something totally different. You're not going to be able to do that. Because you're going to open up a door that finds out that we have a bond issue that's going out of control. We got, right here in the city, you got police cars. You don't even have enough police on the street. You got this and that. You go in your mindset, I want to lower taxes. But you got all these issues. You got fire trucks. You got all these things. So we have to be dynamic. You almost have to be a dynamic. And you have to be a good communicator of agreements and the mayors of Chicago seat to be able to say, it's okay to say, this is what I thought I would. But here's what really got to happen. Because what happens is we have to get to a point to where we can be fluid to the thoughts of these guys. Because we know we would expect if we walked into a job and said, I can do this, that, and so, or I'm going to change the brakes on this car, but I don't have the tools to change the brakes. And then I say, I can do it for this amount of money, but then you get in there, you find that the ropes now you got to say, hey, I got to change the rotors out. So even though I told you it was going to cost you $150 for these brakes, but now the rotors got to be replaced. Now I got to do that. No, you promised me that you're going to be able to. They know that you sold me your brakes.
But why don't they be honest about that? Because people, hey man, this, I know what I said, but this,
honesty is the best policy. And I think you have to be brave enough to go ahead and say, and I think that was something that Vice President Kamala Harris did, in Washington. She said, I thought a certain way about certain things, but now I think it's okay for you to say that. Because guess what? As you gain more knowledge, as you gain more understanding about a particular issue, anybody that don't change their mind until they get more facts, then I would consider that person crazy. Yeah, I would consider you a fool. Because it's foolish not to take new data and not reevaluate your stance. So I think you have to be a person and be able to do that and communicate that to your constituents to say, hey, here's what I thought. But now that I have data, now that things have changed, imagine yourself being a Fortune 500 company and then COVID. What you promised your people, but because of COVID, now that has to change. You have to miter down that thought process, because now whatever you promise the folks that you promised what you're going to do has to be changed because of circumstances. And now I think it was crazy about this redecorating the White House and all that kind of stuff. I don't know the detail behind that, but then I heard them argue this morning the big things about the Bears game that was going to be in London, and they were saying, why would you go to London as the mayor of Chicago? You go to London and you want to go to a Bears game. He said, well, no, I'm going to London to get business to come to Chicago, and I'm going to attend the Bears game. Now, once you get bad press, everything that you do is going to be screwed back. So you have to, read the optics in the room. Sometimes you have to, in my opinion, I would probably say, with the optics in the room right now, I might not take that trip. But it's depending on how he feels about that whole thing. But I can't speak for him, so I don't know all his situations. But I will say that I think we have to land enough to say that as you know better, you do better. And if you promise something that can't be delivered, communicate that back to your constituents and say, hey, I can't do it this time, but here's what I'm aiming to do. And this is why I have to re-angle that thought process and be clear and be and have a clear view on and a clear strategy for moving back in the direction that you're going. But you have to have that conversation.
To me, I think that's I think that it's a campaign killer, a re-election campaign killer, when you make promises on things that you say you're going to do, but then you get in office and realize what you were promising, you can't do it because of blah, 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 blah.
Right.
But you don't put that back out, that your promise is saying that I'm not able to do this because of this, that, and other.
Right.
And then you get rid and you try to go back out there, and I'm like, you didn't promise you said you're going to do. So with what you just said, I agree. You have to keep the last communication wide open, and you have to be out there saying, okay, this is what I was wanting to do, but I'm unable, my hands are tied on this and another. So I think what I need to do now, because you have to change. Right. I'm going to work on this, but I'm still going to get this done. Right. So, but you don't have communication, you're not open enough saying these things. Right. People are still going to be in the dark, like, you didn't say you didn't do what you're going to do. And if you are trying to be reelected, that's not going to be great at all.
Right, and like you say, transparency is important. And I don't, as an elected official, I wouldn't want nobody to deify me and say, "Oh, whatever Willie Simon says is going to happen because he magically spoke." I mean, the only person I know that ever did that was God. Yeah. And so I can plan to say, "Hey, this is my method, and this is where I'm going today. This is how I'm going to execute that." But if I run into a snag, it will be downright irresponsible to keep going down a track that's going to drown our city, drown my area with my vision. When I could either come back and say, let's go back and recant that. I need to do this to deal with it. It's just like you guys know the story about the Titanic, right? Yeah. So the Titanic, this guy got out there and he said, well, shit can't be something, and people believed him for it. Now, you head into a place, and there's always an iceberg out there waiting for us with all the great plans that we have. The iceberg. Now, in his mind, he built the greatest ship ever. But when the iceberg comes, then that's the end of that dream. That's the end of that dream. Or when they shipped the last space shuttle, well, a couple of space shuttles ago, when they told the people, hey, we need to go look at something because if you don't send the space shuttle out, then the space shuttle goes up and second guessing yourself is a good thing sometimes. And recant what you said. I know we gave the date, but you know what? Let's push this back. I'll never forget, I was on a flight and we were headed from Chicago to here. And pilot got on. I was a bit agitated because we had to wait. I was ready to get back home. I mean, we had a good time in Chicago, but I was ready to get back to Memphis. We get on the plane, the man says, "Oh, we got a delay." And so everybody's moaning and groaning. And then the guy gets on and said, "We had a problem with our altimeter. And I know that the altimeter measures how high you go in the sky." And I said, "You know what? Thank God you decided to deal with that, bro." I'm glad y'all took y'all time. We spent an hour on this runway. It's cool with that. I'm cool with that. I'm cool with that delay because if you decided that I can measure it in my mind, I got it. I promise these people I'm going to get them to where I said, no, take your time, brother. Get me that.
Yes. Yeah.
That's the worst thing, to go up in the sky knowing that there may be an issue, and they come back and tip my like, oh man, we could have actually been in the sky. Something could have happened had they not caught that. That brings me to my next question. Like, so with that being said, if I'm running for anything, let's say I'm running for mayor, I should already know what the problems are prior to running, and my campaign should reflect what I'm going to fix based on what I see need to be done.
Exactly. So to your point, you don't want to be nearsighted, right? Because your inner circle is telling you that they think the issues are. You go to a platform. I think it's wise if you take a holistic approach. I mean, if you're running for city council, what really matters is your particular area. I mean, the back of your mind, you're going to be thinking about the rest of the city. But when you run for city council, you're thinking about, if you represent YA, you represent YA. And so you're going to think about YA, and then you think about the city second. But if you're running for mayor, you got to think city first. Then think county and all the other stuff. And so, and you can't think about who's pushing you. You got to think about who's not pushing, and how do I make my platform palatable for everybody, so that we can get to a point to where I have a holistic approach to addressing the city, not just this one particular group saying, "Hey, you're gonna push this hard line down." We have that right. We've seen that. We see what's happening in our state capital, where rules that we get pushed down here from the state, telling us that we can't talk about what's going on as it relates to gun crime here in Memphis, in Shelby County. And on the state level, they're saying, no, you can't even talk about it. In fact, if you talk about it, we're going to hold the state taxes. I mean, that's a difficult thing when you're pushing this. I can't tell people in Clarksdale, in a small town, Smyrna, Tennessee, that I'm going to cookie cutter what's happening on the state level to what's happening in Memphis, Shelby County. That's unfair. That's unfair to the people of Shelby County. If we can't have a voice, when we can't say, hey, that gun law is a negative thing here because we have the highest amount of gun crime. So we need to try to temper that down a little bit so we can deal with that. But I think when we start taking these broad blanket approaches to stuff and not going back and saying, you know what, I'm going to force this down that road anyway. Yeah. And then you actually disenfranchise a whole different part of your state by doing it. And so, to your point when you were talking about being a mayor, you have to have a holistic approach to how what you do affects the entire city. Yeah. You have to have a city approach. And you got to look at growth. You got to look at what's not there already. You can look at what's there, but then you got to think about what's not there and what I need to come here and what I need to build on in order to make this city better. I don't
want to ask this question, and I won't ask you this question. I want to ask you this, and it goes to the growth of Memphis. I actually emailed, and I haven't got a response back from our mayor. I said, like, Disney Atlanta, I think one of the most impressive things is damn the aquarium. It brings in a lot of money. Because we have people coming from our place to come to the aquarium. Why don't we have something of that nature, like a gigantic aquarium? No, we have Libertyland, it's there, but like something like this that'll generate people to come here to just want to come and see that right there alone. And I know crime has something to do with that.
You know what? I think we blame a lot. We say a lot of things about crime. I think, man, really and truly, crime is stimulated by a lot of factors. If you don't have things to do, what they like more like we right. I mean, if you take, I remember living there. I remember Al's golf team. Yes. I remember Adventure River and all those things that were there for children to do around the city. And now what do we have? We got to go and travel to some commercial things, little jumping thing, wherever you want to go to. Not knocking those businesses, but when you start talking about having a massive community-backed entertainment venue. We don't have. And I think it could be supported if our voices are heard about those things. Because what happens in those situations is the first thing we do, and I think we got to do a better job of not doing this, is complain so much about the things that we have in the city to the point that people don't see the value in having. For instance, I used to hear people complain about it. It ain't got but this old city pimping roller coaster. This, that. And so, what marketer is going to come to the city and say, you know what, let me help build on this. But these people already hate this park anyway. And look at where it's located. We don't like the location. The parking is bad. And all these other things that go along with that. I think we have to do a better job at promoting our city for those things. The one thing that I think Atlanta does, and I think that, we should go to Miami, because we can go to Miami for everything. I mean, ain't no Miami go down there, but they made off first. That's the airport hurricane. You go to Miami, Miami built this thing off tourists. And they know people come to Miami to tour, and they put the things out there that attract tourists. And so what we do here, we didn't build our city off tourism. What we did is build our city off distribution, manufacturing, and logistics. So I think it's now time for us to have conversations with the giants in those industries to say, what keeps people here when they come and engage in our city to do their jobs? You got to have stuff to entertain us. Yes. And so I think once we start having those real conversations about what's going to keep people here, not just say, I'm coming to work in Memphis, but I'm on vacation, blah, blah, blah. We have to start having a real conversation about what we need to do to build entertainment here in the city. I mean, I visit a lot of places by yourself. There's, I remember I had this big argument with somebody. They were talking about everything closed in Memphis early. I said, man, I've been to ATL, things closed by 9 o'clock. I mean, there's some spots that'll stay open later, but for the most part, everything's closed. But we have to stop just really down in our city, because I think our city is the perfect spot for growth. We have a river that's right here. We're on Harbor Town. Think about this. This didn't exist 20 years ago. Where we're sitting right now didn't exist 20 years ago. And so the growth that we're seeing from an area that was considered just desolate piece of property is now thriving in. And I think that we can see that in every part of the city. I mean, if you go south to Whitehaven, like you go ahead north, you go up to Jackson area, Freight, all these areas have opportunities. There are opportunity zones for us to bring together that kind of thing. But I think if the government's not doing it, I think go to some private entities that would be interesting. And you get a group of individuals that are willing to put up some money and to say, hey, we'll work with you. We'll get this piece of property, and we'll talk to these private entities that are willing to bring something to Memphis to grow it. I remember there was a major situation that was happening here where they were opening up this movie studio / theme park. That died because, community involvement wasn't really good. I mean, somebody had committed to say, I'm going to bring money to the city. I'm going to do this over there. But it really didn't happen the way we thought it was going to happen, because it was talked about, and sometimes we just expect it to happen because it was talked about. So we almost have to push that by talking to people. Oh, so what happened to that? Why are we not doing that? What happened to this? Why are we not pushing it? And what can we do as a city to try to make sure that happens? Well, what can we do as citizens to try to make sure that? Can we get some? We can get dynamic about it and say, can we get some ownership in this thing? Can we put together citizens that can actually own some of this? Can we put together a real estate investment trust where we can buy some of this property for that kind of thing? I think we have to be aggressive by to really consider where we want to see the growth that we want.
I love that answer. One of the reasons why I voted, I can say it, but I voted for Willie Simon. Okay, one of my reasons, it was really one of the only reasons, because I know that when he was mayor, he bought us the grits. We didn't have that. And I saw that he was trying to build Memphis up. You know what I'm saying? I'm big on wanting to get my city built up. My questions keep going stuff like that. Right. So my thing is, I want my mayor, whoever he may be, to bring the city up. So, like, we've never had an all-star game. And I know I think the reason maybe because we don't have enough hotels and all that like that. That's one of the reasons they cite. Yeah. So my thing is, I want whoever the mayor or whoever they may be to bring these hotels here because we have a all-star game with all-star come revenue. I want the city to come up, but I want the leadership roles to know that you have to bring the city up by doing these things. And I know that Mayor Harris was able to do it at that given time. Now, I'm not saying that Mr. Young can't do it. I'm not saying I don't know that. Right. But my thing is, your actions for what you've done in the past, I look at that and I say, well, I know that he has done this. I don't know what he can do. So that was my reason for doing it. So this is my perspective on that.
That's a great perspective. One of the things I've been talking to people about is what's wrong with marrying what we do now to what happened in the past. What's wrong with going to the wisdom of the prior administration and saying, hey, how did you do this? Like, sit down behind closed doors and say, hey, look, you talked to make this happen. Or even from the opposite end of that. The prior people come in and say, hey, where do you think you want to push this to? How can you help push it? Because we shouldn't have where our legacies are locked in a box. Memphis deserves more than legacies that are locked in a box. We have a legacy here. This was this era. Which Willie Harrison was a great dynamic leader. Willie Harrison actually was our first African American mayor. Historic moment in the city. He's a great superintendent. This guy put our city on the map. And then we go behind that. Even after that, you had other people that were actually handling business in those offices. AC Williams, a good person that I used to talk to all the time, and I think he's a great man, and I wanted to do a lot for the city as well. But I think where we have opportunity is that we go back and take the prior visions and add it to the future and say, hey, how can we make this happen? And how can we utilize not the same tactics, but actually see the strategy that you have behind it, and then let's modernize that and use that same strategy. And the one thing that Willie Harris did have, he had people. Yep. And see, on Young again, when we go back to the electorate, you have people. Also, Willie Harris is there running against 16 people in the case, running for mayor. It was a situation where you had a more focused group of people that was supporting. And so I think once we get to a point where we have a more focused group that's supporting a particular issue and a particular candidate and a particular administration, I think we can start moving to where we have a more consolidated plan on how we're going to run the city. And I like the fact, I think everybody in here wants to see the city. I think we have to do it holistically, though, because just because we get a bunch of hotels, all-star game can't happen if we don't have proper mass transportation. So, we're struggling with matter right now, and what we're going to do with that. So, in order to get people to and from the downtown area, we got to make sure we take care of that. And so, and even after that, after the growth of that All-Star game, one thing that Atlanta did when they were preparing for the Olympics, they made sure their infrastructure matched what they hoped things were going to be. They made sure their infrastructure was in place. So they put the MARTA and all that other stuff to make sure the airport got expanded the way it's supposed to. Those are the things that you do if you want to get progressive out of it. I think for the most part, I think Memphis wants to go in that direction. I think they've tried to go in that direction, but I think there has to be more of a concerted effort to bring past and future mindsets together so that we can.
I actually, I think that was probably the main theme of like all heritage is the age difference. A lot of, they were saying well, he's too old now and stuff like that. I think that's why yeah, kind of fell off on the election. But another thing, and I'm just this just something I want to bring up this week. Did you see the did you see the school that they built in Texas? Walnut Grove.
I did not. I haven't.
It's huge. It's probably, if not the biggest school in the country. They got a state-of-the-art baseball field, basketball stadium, 2-3 basketball stadiums, football field. I mean, it's like a big universe. They got a restaurant and they got I mean, it's huge. You go online, you wouldn't believe it. And I got a partner of mine, he went out there and took a tour of it. And he actually moved to Texas to, let his daughter go there, but they ended up moving to Texas because of this school. So I know Texas is a much bigger state. They probably got a much bigger budget. I'm not sure what the politics is. But the fact that they put time, effort, and energy into their school system so that they can get, I mean, their school has a culinary arts program. They got a podcasting program where they can learn how to do newscasts and all that. Like, they got real food. Do you see anything like this? Anything being brought back that possibly help us, get ahead before we go cops?
Right. I think we're at a pivotal moment in Shelby County as it relates to schools. I mean, we have an agenda on the books right now talking about the school voucher. Yeah, so that kind of affects. Some people say positively, some people say negatively. What happens with the budget that Memphis City, Shelby County schools has to operate? We know that we have several schools. So from that mindset, when we start thinking about it, we know that several schools in the beginning of the year couldn't even open because we didn't have adequate air conditioning. So we can't really think to making a mega school without dealing with those other schools first. So we have to patch those things up first. The other thing I think is, if we start focusing on, I think we don't advertise the greatness of what happens in our citizens. I think what happens with the media and other outlets, whatever, tend to focus on the negativity that's happening in our schools right now. And without I think one of the things that just came out a couple of days ago that our schools and actually achieved our scores, one of the highest scores in the state as it relates to test taking over the last year. So we've made some increases. We made some increasing advancement in our education system just based on what took place last year. And I think when we start focusing on incremental improvement, then we can start moving in the right direction. I mean, I think the work that happens at a lot of these schools needs to be more applauded rather than be focusing on the negative piece of it. But to your point, there should be a mindset because there are 2 schools on the books right now that they're trying to get over. We have the one that's in Fraser that they're trying to build the high school that they're trying to build. And then there's another high school that they were trying to build in Cordova that got rejected because of location. And so I think with that, as we start getting our students into a productive learning environment, building up the amount of teachers that we have in the students in the school system. I mean, there's something on the board right now where they're at that point of trying to get virtual teachers to try to fill spots in classrooms. That's how far behind we are as far as this. So I think once we get those things dealt with, I think we can start looking to something like what you're talking about. And I think we got to align first things first, making sure we get proper funding, making sure that we don't get lost in the shuffle when it comes to this agenda to put these school vouchers out there and really educate people around how those vouchers work. Make sure that, a lot of these teachers even saying that you give me $2,000 to push this agenda is not enough. Right. So I think there's opportunity for growth. We just have to get to a point to where we understand that You need to do first things first. And, but I like that idea. I mean,
I just want to see. I just want to see the school system get better. We had a lot of schools closed down. We used to take pride in like going to a Hamilton game, going to a Southside game. Like it used to be a thing. You know what I'm saying? Melrose is still like that's where I come from. I'm out of Orange Mountain.
right.
And so, it's still like I passed by it the other day. They blacktopping the streets. They still out there barbecuing and tailgating and stuff like that for games. I love to see that.
But yeah, it's a community thing. You have a strong alumni program. So I think that so what I think needs to happen. I mean, I went to Hillcrest High School, graduated class 89. Big ups to class 89 by kids. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, we won the championship at 85. We got to win it next year. Start ragging.
I know a lot of people came out there. I went to Hamilton, but I know a lot of people.
Yeah. Big ups to Hillcrest. But one of the things that we talked about, we had a picnic. Everybody was out there. We were talking, and one of my classmates came and said, "Hey, man, we need to build a stadium because I think one of the things that happens is Melrose has a stadium, right? Yes. So you have the perfect thing to lure alumni back. Hillcrest doesn't have a stadium. So we have to play our games at either Whitehaven or we play games at Central. Everything is a away game for us. Mm-hmm. So I think having a on-campus stadium helps. You get people there and you can call home, your home. And so they talked about doing that. They were like, "Oh man, we can raise some money to do that." I said, "Wait, let's pump the brakes on this. We got to make sure that we talk to the school board about what are the options behind it. We can do this, and we can see what we can do. But I think we have to make sure as we hunger that thought process to make sure that we even have enough students to accommodate what's going on. You need to let people know that it's Hillcrest right now is a green dot. And so we need to talk about how we get off that green dot. There's a lot of opportunity. One thing I give Memphis is nobody asks you what college you went to. They ask you about what high school you went to. And so that is a great thing about this city. I mean, high schools link up. My brother-in-laws went to Westwood. We tease him about that all the time. He's like, "I don't know what y'all want since 32. Go ahead and keep talking. Let's look at crowd in." I mean, Douglas and all the schools, some of them don't exist anymore. But that's a great thing about Memphis. Man, if you mind, yes.
We probably got about 30 more minutes, but yeah, go ahead and do your thing.